Thank you, Vlada. Hey, everyone. Thanks for coming. It's kind of weird, right? Because right behind that wall, it's very beautiful. And then here, that's what you're looking at. But I hope I'll make your time worthwhile. I'll just spend maybe 10 minutes or so giving a bit of context for the event and particularly AI agents. And then I'll pass it on to some much more formidable speakers later who will talk about the actual products that are being built. This is our 8th event, so we started this last year in Denver as an event series, and it's been growing ever since. Certainly covered the globe at this point. So thanks for coming to this 8th event. Also thank you to our long list of sponsors who've made this possible up to now, as well as all the many attendees. This event alone had around 2,400 signups. Obviously, you're the ones who made it into the room. It's now full and at capacity, they just told me, so good on you. Today we'll again have a wonderful set of speakers and panelists to walk us through what's new with AI agents, particularly at this intersection with crypto as well. We also recently launched a podcast under the same theme, Agents Unleashed. You can find it here. I highly recommend you scan it. It's got already thousands of viewers every week. There's a new episode. Sometimes it the host interviews specific ecosystem members who are building exciting things. Other times they're looking into the latest AI agent projects in Web3 and outside. Just tune in and you might even learn something new. So today we have another packed agenda. This is a very small image. I don't expect you to read all this. You can find it on the Luma event page if you want to see it in detail. But safe to say, you won't get bored. Now, let's come to the theme. Obviously, Agents Unleashed. We're hinting here at the AI agents being unleashed. And that's what we're here to discuss and look at. It's now everywhere. If you spin up your Google search, you'll find articles like those, ranging from enterprise adoption to consumer, and also all the challenges that come with using AI agents in the wild. I want to share with you a number of notes on AI agents from my perspective as a builder in the space. I've been building autonomous AI agents since 2019, initially at Fetch for 2 years, and then in 2021 I co-founded Valerie, which is the core contributor to Olas. Here's my Twitter handle. Let's dive in. So I think it's always important when we talk about something like agents to actually define what we're talking about. And granted, that definition still leaves a lot of things unanswered, but at least it's a starting point to situate the rest of the evening in, and then the individual presenters and panelists can hopefully relate back to the definition and tell you exactly what kind of AI agents they're building or talking about. So generally speaking, when we're talking about an AI agent, we mean we're speaking of a software system which does a couple things. So it perceives its environment. It makes a number of decisions based on some internal state and logic, and then it takes action in the environment. So this action part is very important for the agent, for it being agentic. And when it does so autonomously, i.e. with little to no continuous intervention from humans, then we start talking about an autonomous AI agent, and the final piece it needs is some goal. That's usually given by the controller of the system, which often tends to be a human, but could also be an agent itself, and increasingly is. So I hope this definition at least helps you a little bit. So the way I always visualize it is at some loop. You have the AI agent software system that sort of interacts with its environment, it perceives information, and then it acts on it. And actually, the other way to think about it is that obviously we have a lot of agents here in the room. They're human agents, all of us. So from an economic perspective, I'm by training economist. There's a lot of similarities between a software AI agent and in the flesh human agent. Now, of course, they're not the same. what else can we define? There's obviously a lot of ways we could look at distinguishing autonomous AI agents and AI agents. You can think of different axes along which you can do this. I'm trying to do it here on the autonomy axis. So I distinguish between two classes. One is the more autonomous agent where it operates independently without continuous human input. So the idea is you have a software system, you give it some goals, something you want to achieve in the environment, and then it does that on behalf of you whilst you do other things. So the focus is on automation, right? You're not there all the time. Now, most of us actually use a different product every day, which is called ChatGPT or some of its competitors, which I wouldn't put in that class because it doesn't do anything when you're not there, right? At least not yet. And so what happens there is we have more sort of co-pilot nature, right? So it supports humans with suggestions, but doesn't operate continuously in the background for you achieving things. The other way to think about this is where the form is automation, this one is augmentation. So again, a lot of you might have come into this room knowing this perfectly well, and I appreciate that. I'm giving these introductions because we also have from the signups, we know we have a very broad audience. Some people literally coming off the street, learning about this for the first time. It's important we kind of level the playing field. Now, the rest of my talk will be very much focused on some impressions I had from recent months, basically from the last Agents Unleashed till now, building with my team in the space. So one big thing which came up was that MCP came out from Anthropic in November, but really the adoption happened around February onwards, where everyone started, like if you're following the space on X, for instance, you couldn't avoid every second, person was talking about this. And it makes sense. If you think about this part of the agents perceiving and acting on their environment, then well, in that environment, there's things like tools and non-agentic things which you want to interact with, and then there's other agents you want to interact with. And so rightly, people think, okay, can we standardize how these things happen, right? Or at least, so those authors propose. So MCP is particularly focused on agents interacting with tools, and A2A, which comes out of Google, is focused on agents interacting with agents. You can see that MCP is further ahead in sort of at least chatter online because it has more Google trend, like a higher Google trend. That makes sense because when you're building agents, you first worry about actually having the agent talk to a bunch of tools, and then second, you worry about the agent talking to other agents. Now, I do want to raise some points with respect to standards, which I think for the builders in the space might be valuable. I'm personally not yet sold on either of those two. And more generally, I'm just not sold that it's the right time yet to standardize. So I think the arguments against standardizing that early are that we are in an early, fast-evolving landscape which favors rapid change, right? I mean, the kind of agents we're building now are different from the ones we've been building a few months ago, and almost surely we'll be building slightly differently in a few months from now. There's also no real economic pressure yet to standardize. So obviously everyone's got their own thing cooking, but it's not like you're gonna lose out if you don't necessarily plug into another standard just yet. At least in many of the niches, that's the case. Certainly there's no cross-niche standardization required for you to do anything today. I think my strongest point against standardization is that truly autonomous AI agents, they'll just figure it out themselves. I, as the developer, don't have to think in the exact same way as with microservices or web apps, where literally everything has to be rules-based and deterministic. Now I have a probabilistic open-ended system that dynamically can kind of interpret the world. So why is the first thing I think about standardizing everything, right? There's a bit of a dissonance there, and I'm not saying I'm right or wrong on this, but I think it's worth thinking about. And then the other obvious kind of point against it is, at least to some degree, is, well, we have existing standards. So for instance, if you think about moving bytes from A to B, well, that's fixed. You don't need to come up with something new there. And then we have a lot of application level, in terms of internet speak, internet stack, like you have web stack, you have a lot of protocols like HTTP, others that help you communicate there. Now in Web3 we have smart contracts, wallets, etc. So it's not immediately obvious that we need a whole bunch of new standards just to get started. In fact, we don't, because everyone got started already. Now, arguments 4 is that obviously once you think about multi-agent systems, at least if you look at the agents that are being built today, they're still not these open-ended sort of magical beings that we all want that just do anything magically. They're pretty much mixtures of rules-based and learning-based systems, and by their nature still need that standardization to get anything meaningfully done between each other. So there then comes in the question of network effects, right? Can we reduce developer friction with this? Certainly can. And then also interestingly, just earlier this day, I got pulled into a panel last minute where the main participants of the panel were actually presenting their talks around standardization, ERC20, and what that means for agents. And I think, interestingly, Web3 does tend to favor standardization early. And so maybe if we take it from that vantage point, we do need it. But yeah, I wanted to throw this out there, particularly for the builders in the space. The other point, which is quite interesting, is around frameworks. So this was a GIF, and then I was told that doesn't load. But you can go to the site, and you will be scrolling for quite some time. There is like hundreds, thousands probably, of frameworks on this site alone. And when I posted that in our workspace, some people came back and were like, oh, this framework is missing, this framework is missing. So there's a lot of frameworks. Now, that's generally a good thing. Developers have choice. So then that raises the question, will there be like a sort of winner-takes-it-all dynamic over time? And I personally think that is pretty unlikely in the relevant time span of the next few years. Because, firstly, you have a high diversity of use cases. So we already talked about this distinction between autonomous AI agents and more like co-pilot agents. Then there's the deployment mode. Are we talking about some agent that's embedded in some game somewhere? Or are we talking about an agent you self-host that connects to your wallet? Or are we talking about like some enterprise solution that runs in the backend somewhere to facilitate customer support? They require very different architectures. And usually it's not the case that one stack does it all. We also have, like, from languages, there's over 8,000 programming languages, I think. So that gives you an indication that the frameworks might be a bit similar. Open source forking, and then I think one important point which we certainly feel at OLAS is like the integration challenges favor sort of different frameworks for different problems. It is just very challenging, even like I guess MCP in a way tries to solve that, to integrate with a lot of things. But even there, you're gonna just push that framework question down to the MCP layer, because again, you as a developer, you would want to bring in like generalizations there. And I think what we are finding certainly in OLAS is very, very challenging to have like, to plug into a lot of things, even with like generative coding, generative AI and kind of coding agents which result from that. A final point from a builder perspective is around UX challenges. So often now I hear these talks where I go to them and then the sort of blah, blah, blah agents, UI will go away. And therefore everything's gonna be easier. I'm like, hold on. The UX is very challenging. Like, if you actually think about this as a user with ChatGPT, like, it's a black box. I mean, it can do a lot of things for you, but if you prompt it wrong, it's gonna be pretty useless. And that's exactly one of the challenges with agents, is like, how do users discover and onboard into these systems, actually knowing what the agent does for them and can't do for them. Then there's the questions around control versus autonomy. If I have an agent that's very autonomous, at some point it might decide, like we're not there yet technically, but at some point you could imagine the agent decides it's more capable than you, so it will just do something else because that's better for you. Versus maybe today the bigger problem is you say something like, okay, manage my DeFi portfolio, and it starts doing things which you didn't like, but you weren't expressing them before. So a lot of UX challenges also around transparency and explainability. And again, I'm excited because I know today we'll at least see some talks that cover some of those in the early stages, I would say. So finally, what's the biggest application so far? Well, as far as I know, it's coding agents. Certainly, when we look at revenue, like things like Cursor have really exploded. There's a lot now. This isn't the most up-to-date slide. And so the question backs like, what's next? And will this be the sort of dominant AI agent application? And I'll leave you with the answer to this because I don't have it. But today we'll hear about a number of live use cases at this intersection of crypto and AI, and I'm very excited for that. Just the last couple of slides on Olas. So we today announced that we have a new look. You can check it out on the site. We have much more focus on apps. For consumers, we always had our app called Pearl. It's giving you access to a world of AI agents that you can self-host. The same way you own your key. You own your keys to own your coins. We believe you should own your agents. You should own the underlying weights, the underlying open source code. With Pearl, you can do that. And for businesses, we have a marketplace. All of this for enabling the Pearl application. And so if you're curious about either of those two things, come talk to me. And you can also learn about the token flywheel that sits at the core of this. I leave you with a high-level outlook of what we're here to build at Olas, which is we want to combine these into building the most powerful agents that you can imagine. We think everyone should be able to own their agents or co-own them as a group, and I hope you do too. So on that note, let's wrap up and hand over to whoever is the first speaker. And I should say, this is all made possible by the sponsors. So Almanak, Bagel, Giza, Near, and OpenLedger as the gold sponsors, Gaia, Nevermind, MantleX, and Recall Silver, and Theoriq and Oasis. So thank you to all of them, and all of them will be here presenting in one way or another today. Thank you very much for coming.